Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's crack-a-lackin' Fantasy Champions? Welcome back to the pod.
What's good? What's good?
I'm amped for week 2. I watched Thursday Night Football last night. Great. Well, great game is really a venturous thing to say, but
great for fantasy.
It was good for fantasy. Yeah, it's a very mid game overall. Like the Eagles kind of just, I will say, the Eagles offense not in a good place right now. Really not. They had a very good rushing game, but like passing, they couldn't do nothing. And
versus the Vikings defense.
The Vikings defense,
not good.
Yeah. So, who actually against the pass first 2 weeks of the season been okay, been mid, been all right. So
yep.
I don't know if that means anything, but so hopefully you enjoyed that game. You got some fantasy matchups. I had the best of both worlds. I had the explosion of Devonta Smith and the calamity of Alexander Madison. So I can have pain on both sides. But the person I was playing had AJ Brown. So the crap just evened itself out.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think you I would say that was a win for you last night because Madison at you at least kind of know sucks, whereas mid. AJ Brown was a second round pick, so he kind of needs AJ Brown to go off.
I was trying to talk to you about Gibbs, but you just shut me down. It wasn't even like a question.
Yeah, I did.
I could have just offered you like Devonta Smith or something, but
yeah, I would have declined it. I drafted Gibbs with Devontae Smith on the board. That's how you got it to your team.
Okay, when you go 0-2, you can call me back.
I'm a psycho.
You can call me back and I can say no.
Okay.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Welcome into the show. If you haven't been here before, welcome. And if you've been here before, welcome. We got weekly starts and sits on the show. It's the first time we're really doing starts and sits with some information from week 1. The information might be bad that we do have. And so we'll see who's more accurate this week with their starts and sits. Last week we did them together. This week we're doing them separately. Before we do our starts and sits, though, and we get you directly dove right into the content, check out our website. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and their podcast platforms. Check out the review section. Just leave a nice little review. If you're going to say bad things, better not to say anything. And then share it with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like and comment down below.
It's better to say nothing than something mean.
You know how many times a day, like I'm not even saying a week, I'm saying a day that I'm on Twitter and I type out a full rage tweet in a comment to somebody who I disagree with and then just delete it.
That's good, man. That's growth.
Yeah, it's good. Especially when it's about Mac Jones. You're going to say something bad about my man Mac Jones, I'll come for you.
Well, yeah, you will. I just want to quickly say our starts and sits last week so we can brag. Okay. Our starts were not perfect, but they weren't bad.
I don't remember.
Kirk Cousins versus Tampa, he got like 20 points.
Okay, that's mid.
A.K. Dobbins versus Houston, he got like 13 before he tore his Achilles. But he was on pace for getting like a monster 20-plus point week. The one bad one was mine, so you can take credit for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Jahan Dotson versus Arizona, he had 9 points.
Yeah, you
Tyler Higbee versus Seattle only had 7 points, so that was kind of mid. But our sits, Daniel Jones versus Dallas, he had 6. DeAndre Swift versus the Patriots, he had 1. Gabe Davis versus the Jets, I think he had like 5. And then Chig versus the Saints, he had 0. So our sits, we went 4 for 4.
We chigged
and I would say our starts, we went 3 for 4.
So hopefully we're just as good this week. But from here on out, Rick and I are going to do these separately. So there will be historical record of who is better at this than the other.
Yeah,
which is me.
I don't like my chances.
Now, it is funny because we tend to agree most of the time. I haven't really looked at Rick's. So we'll see. We'll see how I feel. But anyway, so we're going to do these separately. We're going to try to expedite some of the information that you're going to get here and not spend an hour on each player. So without further ado, Rick is going to start with his QB start of the week, and then I'll give you my QB start of the week, and we'll go from there. Ready?
Yep.
Let's ride.
So my QB start of the week is Our QB sit of the week last week, which is Daniel Jones. I wanted to do Justin Fields, but I felt like that was cheating.
It
So
could
I'll do
be.
Daniel Jones here. I think this is a perfect soft bounce back landing spot for him against Arizona, who is probably the worst team in the NFL. Um,
Poor Arizona.
I think this is a good get back for the Giants, a game where they can feel good about themselves after they beat the Cardinals like 24-0, because they're the Cardinals.
Mhm.
And Daniel Jones, he's not a quarterback that if you did draft him to start every week, good for you, but he shouldn't be a quarterback that you drafted to start every single week. He should be kind of a plug and play guy. And this is a week to plug and play him, I think. Against Arizona, it's a great matchup. Not a good defense. Sam Howell was putting up some numbers on him, so I think Daniel Jones can do that as well.
Sam Howell put up numbers against them?
Not really. I mean, he had like 17 fantasy points.
Oh my God.
So
Yeah, Daniel Jones kind of needs that bounce back after last week. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be a short relationship on my fantasy team, but that ended real fast.
yeah.
I was like, see ya. I think the rushing floor probably is going to keep him safe, so I don't mind him against Arizona. I think it's a good matchup. All right, my quarterback start this week is Geno Smith against the Detroit Lions. Now, Detroit's always a gritty, tough football team, so I don't think he's going to come by these fantasy points easily. Might not be easy fantasy points. Detroit gave up 20 fantasy points in the first game they played against Patrick Mahomes, so I don't think it's fair. I don't think that's a fair ceiling, if you will. But it was a top 8 easy matchup in fantasy football. So Detroit, they do decently stopping the run, I think, but stopping the pass, their secondary is not wonderful. So this should be a easier matchup for Geno Smith. He had a good week. What did he do week 1?
It was not a good week.
Yeah, no, it was not a good week. I said that, and I was like,
112 passing yards, one
transported to
touchdown,
2022 when I
0
said that.
interceptions, 10 fantasy points.
Yeah, so he was not good, but I think this week it'll be a good game against Detroit. He should also get a soft landing spot here and have a much better week, hopefully.
Yeah, I'll say last year versus Detroit, in Detroit, he had 33 fantasy points.
Ooh.
But Detroit's defense is better than last year, so we'll see.
That's fair. All right, Rick. I'll give my running back start this week, and then you can give your start.
Sure.
Or, actually, maybe we should do the sit quarterbacks next, or should we just?
Yeah, we should probably do this.
Okay. All right. Who's your sit quarterback?
My sit of the week at quarterback is Dak Prescott versus the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
I know you might feel differently about the Jets defense, but I think they are one of the best in the NFL, if not the best. They're, I think, top 3. And we saw Josh Allen struggle against them. And Josh Allen historically struggles against the Jets anyway, but he really did struggle on Monday Night Football. I think Dak, I don't think it's going to be that bad because now Zach Wilson is the quarterback for the entire game. And he was on Monday, but now it's like you get to game plan for it. So there might be some easy goal line chances or red zone chances for the Cowboys that their offense didn't have anything to do with, i.e. turnovers. So he could end up with a couple fantasy points here and there for that. But I really don't see Dak going out against the Jets defense and lighting them up. I don't think that is a reality. So there's a chance he could go out and get like 15, maybe close to 20 points. But that might be his ceiling for the week. So I wouldn't go near Dak. I would start somebody else if I had another quarterback. Realistically, I think Dak's looking at like a 15-point week.
Yeah, fair enough. The other thing, too, is I think the Jets, just from an emotional standpoint, obviously losing Rodgers sucks. I don't think we even hit that this week. But morale, I would say, if they lost the game against the Bills, probably would have been low.
Yep.
But they won. So that might give them slight hope that they have any kind of chance this season. It's only week 2. So, maybe Zach Wilson works. I don't know. Maybe they convince themselves this week they're good. But I
was going to say, don't say Zach Wilson workout. That's not gonna, They might convince themselves they're good.
No, but that's what I'm saying is that, like, it's not, they're not out of contention. Like, they can still fight. And, like, this week might be a week where they're not going to be, like, if it's week 8 and they're 1-7, I think, obviously the Jets defense probably is going to start to care less at that point. But Going up against Dak Prescott this week, they should probably. And Dak did not have a good week last week, despite scoring 40 points. It was all the defense. So,
Yeah.
Dak against the Jets, I do like. My sit at quarterback is Tua versus the New England Patriots. Now, New England held Jalen Hurts down last week, who is one of the best fantasy quarterbacks you can get. Pats gave up 12.5 fantasy points to the quarterback position. So they did a good job against Jalen Hurts, one of the best offenses in the NFL. They typically do a good job against quarterbacks. The one thing I would note is, so Miami's offensive line is bad. Like, they're in a bad place right now. Pat's offensive line ain't any better, but they're not in a really good place. And when Tua gets blitzed or pass rushed and you're able to get to him, he kind of like mentally panics. So I don't think this is going to be like everyone's talking about 466 yards and 3 touchdowns and how great a game he had and how the Dolphins offense is elite. And it's like, usually this is when the Patriots defense usually steps in when they play a team like this and kind of just shuts them down. And everyone's like, oh, well, never mind. So
Yeah.
I think this will be a tougher matchup for Tua. I think it's in the same vein as what Rick was talking about with Dak, probably 14, 15 fantasy points, but Tua's not a rusher, so like everything is tied to yardage, and if he throws 250 and 1 touchdown, you're going to have a tough week.
Right. Yep.
So anyway, all right, let's move on to the running back position. I'll start with the running backs. Rachaad White versus Chicago is my choice here. I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I believe, but Rachaad White last week, who did he play again?
The Vikings.
Which should have been an easy matchup. They don't have a great run defense.
Yep.
And look what the Eagles did on Thursday Night Football. 200-plus yards given up. And Rachaad White was awful in that game. So this scares me a little bit. Because matchup, I guess, doesn't matter for him. In a bad way. But the Bears gave up 32.5 fantasy points to the running back position this past week. They're not a great run defense. They're not really a great defense overall. So I would imagine that this is a game that Rachaad White can go into and bounce back. Hopefully he does. But, I mean, despite the Buccaneers actually pulling off the win this week, they look terrible. Like, on offense. Like,
yeah.
It did not look great. So, they had their moments. Baker had his moments. But, like, the things did not look efficient. They didn't look tidied up. So
their defense looked at least respectable. That's one good thing to say.
I mean, hey, they won the game. So,
yeah.
But against the Bears, hopefully there can be a bounce back for Rachaad White. If you drafted him and you wanted to play him, like, now would be a spot to do it against an easy matchup. But, if he scores like 6 points and burns, you'd be like,
He's cooked.
I'm sorry.
It's over.
Yeah, I would cut him. No.
I'm approaching that with White. This is going to be a real test week.
Okay.
For him, because I was already kind of iffy on him,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2 yards per carry against the Vikings is like really disgusting.
That was real
we'll see against the Bears. Mine is Miles Sanders. Monday Night Football against the Saints is apparently a pretty decent matchup. It's the home opener as well, and the reason he's on this list is because I think he was very encouraging in Week 1 against the Falcons. He had 22 touches.
Yes, sir.
And was not awful in those touches. 4 yards a carry isn't anything to write home about, but it wasn't awful. He had 4 catches on 6 targets, which is really encouraging. He just had a fumble, which kind of hurt his fantasy day. He still ended up with 11.8. So without that fumble, he would have had like a 13, 14-point week, which is pretty solid and a respectable RB2. And I think he can do that again this week against the Saints, minus the fumble, and maybe even throw a touchdown there. So I'm looking at a 14, 15-point week with a potential to add a touchdown in there and get that to like a 20-point week. It's a relatively good matchup. Should be a hype game. Bryce Young's home opener. And I think Miles Sanders showed enough in Week 1 where he's going to demand the work among those running backs in that room.
Okay, fair enough. The Saints gave up 16 points last week to the running back position, so they were kind of middle of the pack.
Fantasy Pros said it was a good matchup, but who knows?
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. I don't think it's a bad matchup. I think opportunity really spells all with Miles Sanders, so like he's safe.
Yeah.
It's a good matchup. All right. New Orleans typically is not a great matchup for running backs, so maybe
the They did lose. I forget his name, but they had a very good defensive tackle.
Yeah.
They lost him this offseason, so I don't know if that's going to affect their
Hmm.
and maybe why Fantasy Pros says it's a good matchup. But
Okay. All right,
yeah, I guess.
let's talk about the sits. I have Kyron Williams versus San Francisco. This is going to be a funny sit at the running back position because Rick and I have two guys on the same football team. So, but I have Kyron Williams this week against San Fran. The only reason why I put him on this list is because you probably picked him up. You probably dumped some waiver budget if you didn't get Roshan, or maybe you liked Kyron better. You probably dumped a lot of waiver budget to get Kyron Williams. You're probably like, okay, I want to play him. You know, you want to be, it's like opening up a freaking Christmas present. You're like, yeah, let's go. Your first waiver wire out of the season. And I wouldn't start him against San Francisco. San Francisco is just, there is not anything that San Francisco doesn't do that's not great right now, to be honest with you. Everything's firing on all cylinders. So, they only gave up 10 points last week to the running back position. It's going to be a tough matchup for Kyron Williams. I think this is going to be a crash landing for the Rams offense, who kind of looked slightly okay this past week. So I think, you're going to see Kyron Williams come down to earth a little bit. What I would look at for him after this week is more the opportunity share to see if it continues to shift towards him. But I don't think it's going to be a good fantasy week for him. So I would say Kyron Williams.
Yeah, and then for me, I said Cam Akers is my guy, and you probably, I mean, after week one, definitely are nervous about it, but you probably drafted him to be your starting running back or a potential flex option.
Zero wide receiver.
And to me, I'm just staying so far away because everything you just said about the 49ers also holds for Cam Akers. But not only that, but Kyron Williams had a higher snap percentage than Cam Akers as well. So he's arguably the second running back on that team, even though it seems like it's going to be a close to 50-50 split, and it's a bad matchup. And he was awful in week one against a better matchup with the Seahawks. He got a touchdown, so he had 8.9 fantasy points. So on the surface, it doesn't look like he had a truly awful game.
Yeah.
He had 22 carries for 29 yards, 1.32 yards per carry.
It's unbelievable.
That is brutal.
Yeah.
I'm not touching Cam Akers at the 10-foot pole this week against the 49ers.
Yeah, agreed. San Francisco running back, stay away. Okay, let's move to the wide receiver position. Rick, give me your start at the wide receiver position this week.
This is one that I know you'll probably disagree with, but I had to throw him on here. It's Jerry Jeudy. All right, Jerry Jeudy making his season
debut
some
good reasons
against the Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
And the Commanders.
You did this last week with Dotson.
A little bit. What do you mean?
Never mind. Continue.
Well, Dotson, when we did our list, McLaurin was originally going to be out. Yeah. And then
he played.
After we released the show, McLaurin started practicing again, and then he played.
Yeah.
So that kind of threw a wrench in that. But with Jeudy, first of all, the Commanders are not a great passing defense. They have a great front. Chase Young, Sweat. They have a lot of guys up front, but their secondary – they did draft the guy at 16, I forget his name, right ahead of Christian Gonzalez, the corner. So they were trying to improve the secondary, but last year it just wasn't good. And this year, in game one, it looked okay, but they were also playing the Arizona Cardinals. So I still don't know how good that Commander's secondary is. I think it's a little fragile. This game will be at home. Jerry Jeudy is fully healthy, or seems to be fully healthy. Sean Payton said after the first game that that Jerry Jeudy was a true game time decision. He almost played in week one, but they just wanted to be cautious. He's been a full participant in practice this week, so he's going to be fully involved in the game plan. He is their wide receiver one when he is out there, and he's going to get used a lot. He's going to get a lot of targets in a game where I think he could do some things against that Commanders defense.
Yeah, I was going to say Washington had a really good week last week against
they played Arizona.
But yeah, so Arizona's the the question is, I mean, we know it's Arizona.
Josh Dobbs was their quarterback.
Arizona is awful passing. Like we know that to be the fact. So you can't really ask the question, well, was it Washington or was it them? So we know it's Arizona being bad, but is there improvements for Washington? I guess we'll see this week. But my concern with Jerry Jeudy continues to stand with the injuries. So, and I wasn't a hamstring that he was dealing with.
Yeah.
So that doesn't typically work out. I mean, I hope Jerry Jeudy breaks. I've been rooting for this dude to have like a breakout.
He did
And
at the end of last season a little bit.
yeah, no, like he's getting, but he needs to put it together. He needs to start fast, and he needs to be real good. And it's got to happen soon because people are going to start checking.
Don't forget, last year, 15 games played while missing games while getting injured, like in the first quarter in games, right? He had 200 PPR points and was the wide receiver 22.
Yeah, with
basically 3 missed games. Like he was a true wide receiver 2 last year. So we'll see how it works out with him. He just needs to stay on the field, though. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. I will give you my start at the wide receiver position. We got DJ Moore at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's they had a good defensive week this past week.
They did.
But DJ Moore was not good. 2 targets, 2 catches. Fantasy football burned a lot of people. And there might be some thoughts about taking him out of your lineup and saying, well, you know what?
I thought about it in some dynasty leagues I have him in.
Yeah, maybe I don't start him. Here's why you will. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, despite it not being a high-scoring game, they gave up 38 fantasy points to the wide receiver position, which is 3rd most last week. So it's only 1 week. But Tampa's not a good football team, and it shows. So I think this particular week is a good week that you can start DJ Moore with some confidence. If we go a month and DJ Moore is not producing and the Bears offense looks horrible, like it did week 1, then we have to start questioning whether or not to start him. But at this point, like, you spent probably a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick on the dude. Like, yanking him out of your starting lineup at this point is probably a situation that is not the smartest. It's an overreaction a little bit. So I would start him this week. Hopefully he has a bounce back game against Tampa Bay. But it's not time to start DJ. It's not time to sit DJ Moore just yet.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Let's jump to the sits. Rick, who do you got at sit for running back? I mean, at wide receiver.
So I'm staying in the same game on the other side of the field. I got Terry McLaurin as my sit. He's another one of my guys, but he's battling that turf toe. And even though he did play in week 1, and we talked about how that affected Dotson, he wasn't like super heavily targeted. He only had 4 targets in that game. And I think he's still, turf toe is something that can affect wide receivers for even if they're on the field. And I think he's still kind of battling that. So until we see him get that full target share, I'm a little nervous on him. Yeah. And he's playing Denver, which is a really tough matchup. He's going to be matched up against Patrick Surtain, who is one of probably the 3 or 4 best corners in the league, in my opinion. In week 1, Devontae Adams had an okay game, but he had like 6 catches for like 60 yards, which for Adams isn't anything crazy. So he did a pretty good job on Adams last week. I think he does it again on McLaurin, and I think it's going to be a tough day for Terry.
Yeah. I mean, Denver had a really good week last week. Who did they play again?
The Raiders. But their defense last year, despite
Devontae Adams,
a disaster of a team,
Jacoby Myers did well.
Defense wasn't bad.
No, their defense was not bad. All right, my sit at the wide receiver position is all the Chiefs wide receivers against Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville played Indianapolis, and I mean, Anthony Richardson, what was he, 24 or 37, 66%, I think. So
yes,
great news. That's a great line for a guy that threw 45% in college or whatever the crap it was. Or maybe it was 55. But the receivers didn't have a great day against Jacksonville. Jacksonville actually had a really good defensive day in terms of like stopping fantasy points from occurring. So obviously the Chiefs are a far better team. It's going to be a lot harder of a challenge for Jacksonville. But if you watch Thursday Night Football to kick off the season for the Chiefs and the Lions, the Chiefs suck at the receiver position. Those guys are awful. Now, I would expect them to bounce back and have a better week this week, but it's not enough for me to look at Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, or even Rashee Rice, or any real wide receiver and say, hey, I'm going to start them this week against Jacksonville. I would assume Kelsey's back this week, Travis Kelce. So if he's back...
Yeah, Andy Reid already said he's good to go.
Yeah, so if he's good to go, so him being in the game is automatically 10 targets that these guys didn't get before. And it looks like because there is no major one, the wide receiver position for Kansas City is probably just going to collapse. Like at this point, not collapse in terms of not be efficient or not be good at some point, but I don't think they have a wide receiver one. So there's not really a fantasy option for us to kind of hang our hat on. I think the days of Chase, it's like what running back room does everyone, it's like the Rams running back room. Everyone seems to chase it because they're expecting another Todd Gurley.
You could even say the Chiefs running back room.
Or you could even say the Chiefs running back room, but it's never going to happen. The Chiefs wide receiver room is something that everyone chases, and it's okay to get some shares of it, but like, it's just not there. It's not like I don't think there's a wide receiver on this football team that is going to be Tyreek Hill. It's just not going to happen. Not even close. So there might be some weeks where you can get them out there in your lineups, but this week I would sit all Chiefs receivers.
Yep.
Until they prove it. All right. Let's move to the tight ends, the final position. This should be quick and dirty. I'll start off with my tight end start this week. It's Freiermuth against Cleveland. Now, Freiermuth had an okay week this past week. I think he had 9 points. So tight ends, a little golf clap. Good job for a tight end there with 9 points. Now, he scored a touchdown and caught like 2 passes, so it only had 2 targets. Not a great week for the Steelers offense. The Steelers sucked offensively. They couldn't get the ball moving. They had tons of 3-and-outs. They tried to get the ball to Freiermuth a couple of times in the red zone, but stuff wasn't happening. So this week I anticipate the Steelers to be better offensively, and I think Freiermuth will be a guy that can do that. At the tight end position, that was like Cleveland had a good week this past week. But they did give up some fantasy points. I'm trying to find the numbers here. I don't know why I can never. Oh, there it is. They gave up. Oh, never mind. They gave up 3 fantasy points to the tight end position. So, frick me. Hopefully.
But I will tell you this. I don't know if you mentioned it already.
Oh, Deontay Johnson is out. That's right.
Yes.
That was the main reason why we wanted to put him on this list. But, Deontay Johnson is out this week. So that should, I would imagine, mean more targets for Pat Freiermuth, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I think they're going to want to get Freiermuth involved because of that. Mm-hmm. My star of the week at tight end is Hunter Henry. I don't know if Parker is going to be out again this Sunday, but if he is, I mean, Henry is the clear red zone threat. And not just red zone threat, but he seems to be like the third down guy too. I mean, he had a huge catch on 4th down. Mm-hmm. He's old reliable there. And it's a game where Miami's defense is not great, and the Patriots offense looked pretty decent in week 1. Mm-hmm. So it's a game where they could put up another pretty solid week again. So it's a pretty good matchup for him, and he could have some targets available again if Parker continues to miss time or if Juju ends up missing the game or something. But even if everyone's fully healthy, Hunter Henry could still be in line with a solid week.
Hunter Henry could be a sneaky breakout tight end this year.
Is it a breakout tight end if Max rookie year he was?
Well, no, I mean in terms of a guy that didn't perform well and
bounce back year.
No one expected him to be good. I don't know how we spent all camp watching the trash receivers on the Pats and said, no, to the tight end position there.
Well, no, in best ball I had a decent amount of Hunter Henry. So.
All right, so let's move to the sits. My sit is Gerald Everett at Tennessee. Tennessee had a good week defensively, week 1. They gave up 5.5 points to the tight end position this past week. It's not an easy matchup for Gerald Everett, and there's a lot of targets for why am I forgetting his name? Justin Herbert.
Yeah,
to throw the ball to. A lot of guys to get the ball to. So and all of them were effective, but I don't think that Gerald Everett's a guy that you want to get in your starting lineup this week. He might have a game where he gets 6 targets and catches a touchdown, or he can have a game that he catches 2 catches and has 2 targets and 10 yards and sucks. So there's a lot of volatility with Gerald Everett, and if there's an option for Hunter Henry might even be on your waiver wire right now, I would start Hunter Henry every day of the week over Gerald Everett this week.
Yeah, and my sit of the week at tight end, kind of the same thing. It's Juwan Johnson on the Saints. He's against Carolina this week, and Carolina, according to Fantasy Pros, is a very, very tough matchup.
Yep.
In week one, Juwan Johnson was okay. 5 targets, 3 catches, 36 yards, 6.6 fantasy points. He's very touchdown reliant, and in a game against the Panthers, who have pretty good safety play and overall a pretty solid defense, and that game will be in Carolina. I don't know if Juwan Johnson's going to get a touchdown, and therefore he would be on my bench.
Sneaky early season big game for both these teams.
Yeah,
I think Carolina might not be horrible, and they string a couple of games together. That division is so friggin' bad.
That's true.
It could be a division deciding matchup Panthers when you get to week 17.
If the Saints win, though, they're 2-0, and the Panthers are 0-2. So that
throws water on the. But they're both 1-1 if that happens. I could see a 7-10 team winning the division this year with this division.
I could see it too. I think the Saints are probably gonna win that division, but they're not a great team. So
yeah,
I can see the Panthers fighting it, or the Falcons.
Oh boy, here we go. Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, he sucks.
He's terrible. All right, there you go. There are the starts and sits for Rick and I for the week. Hopefully you use this information. You get these guys in your starting lineup. Hopefully, there's extra guys here, so there's extra, stuff for us to be wrong on. But anyway, take our advice, do the deal. We got buys and sells. See you later, guys.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.